Hi everyone, I am really excited to interview Daler Singh Mathadu. He is CEO of Western Outdoor Structures Private Limited. Daler Singh is the first Asian engineer graduated from IMS Germany. In this episode, you will get to know about Daler Singh's journey and insights about his projects. So without much ado, let's jump into the interview. So, Mr. Singh, can you tell us about yourself and your background?
Uh, Mayur, if I reflect back how it all started, because you've written your life. So life was tough. Coming from a middle class craftsman family, my father was a carpenter and he moved into Mumbai 10 years before I was born. And so we had a house in our own workshop. It is like living in a garage. And the earliest memories of mine are when I opened my eyes that there were wood and steel all around myself. So my playthings were, hammers and various tools. And that's how life began. So as it would have turned out, I got interested in whatever was around me at that young age, and would like to make and break things as every other child would do. And so my toys were my tools, which people use professionally, and that's what I remember. And then I'm talking about 1980s, back in India, Mumbai. It was still developing, and the times were tough. And I had to leave my school due to family problems. And I started working in my workshop, father's workshop, at the age of 13 or so. So that's how it started. It was professional life tough, but that's how it was all around. You see, the entire neighborhood where we used to stay was made up of artisan and craftsmen, and it was a lower middle class kind of an area. And it was so very normal for young people to work. And I started as a machinist, incidentally, because we also had a tool room. So there was one lathe machine, and then there were various machines. And since I was already attracted to machines since the earliest stages I could remember, it was easy for me to get into that life. And that is how the journey started. And I remember I did machining from the age of, say, 14 to 18. And at that time, there were certain issues with companies providing services. So, so they just stopped giving us work. And there was a big problem in Mumbai, and the industry started migrating to other places of India due to labor unrest and all those things. And we were a service provider. So once that thing got a little bit slowed down, I looked around and I could see that there were people next door to me who were doing fabrication. So I started lightweight fabrication, and that is where around the age of 18, I would enter into the line which I am presently in today, steel fabrication. And I was a natural with steel fabrication because there was something in me which would always tell me what to do. I think people call it intuition or sixth sense or whatnot. But that's how it all started. And I started with lightweight fabrication. I did that fabrication work for almost a long period of time. Say, you can say till the age of 38 or so, 20 years. And I was very curious, so there was always a backward integration part. I just needed to understand how things are. And so you can see a guy who is not even from an high school, had to drop out early and is working around. So I had this curiosity, and then God blessed me with a lot of kind people around me, who would answer questions for me, who would take time out and explain. So all these mentors, and they came from various backgrounds. Some people, even my customers whom I used to work for, the engineers who used to give me the drawings, I would, take out time and keep on asking them questions. So they were kind enough to explain it to me. And the tensile structure industry, where I am now, I accidentally got into it. And at that time, around 20 years back, the supermarket culture was just happening in India. So one of the first supermarket being built around my town, which is a suburb of Mumbai. So I took up the contract for fabrication. I was working hard, and I was still then a small time guy, putting everything into my car, the welding machine, the gas cutting sets, and 5 people, and then going to site and erecting or whatever. And he got a quotation from somebody for some canopies. Now, this guy was, I want to name him here. This guy was Mr. Damodar Mal. Today, he is the number two in Reliance Retail. And he is one of the most known people for organized retail in India. He's written many books. So he was looking at me. And when he got this quotation, he called me, "Hey, Dalet, you've been working for a week or so, and I can see your bill is around 10,000 rupees. And then this guy is giving me a quote of 1 lakh of rupees for 4 canopies. So can you do it?" And as is will me throughout my life, I didn't say no to work. So that is one mantra in my life which has worked me a lot, helped me a lot. So I knew about it because, as I told you, I was curious. I wanted to know about things. So I bought in the stuff, and it was not rocket science. And I made those canopies. I gave him a 40% discount, and still I made 50% profit out of it. So the beginnings of the tensile structure industry was somebody asked me to do it. I was willing enough to say yes. And then I found out all the details to do a nice professional job. By that time, internet was also happening, a lot. So I could see a lot of pictures and stuff and how to do it. So after that one successful thing, I became more curious. That has been the hallmark of my, ability to understand things. It all starts with curiosity. And then I found Fry Auto on the internet. And that was it. Then I just loved that guy, his approach, his way towards looking at things. He was not somebody who was, you see, too methodical or too clinical about things. He was what I could say a passionate person trying to explore things about him, having different vistas, you know. And this is all I would like to say in short because Mayur, if you ask about life and background, today I am 54. So it's 40 years of professional life and background. I think I'll keep it short here because there is much more to talk, and we'll be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's quite inspiring, Mr. Singh. And like, I would like to know, so most of the lightweight structures you did in the big earlier career part, you everything was self-taught and you asked questions and did projects. So apart from fabrication, how would the structural design aspect played role? Like, how did you manage that?
Well, Mayur, it was like I am coming from a craftsman's family, and we are called Ramgadiyas in India, coming from the Sikh community. And Ramgadis are supposed to be like intuitive builders of the old times. You see, when the older times, there were no drawings and there were no calculations, and people used to build buildings and, so many vast temples and, whatnot has been built in India, has a great cultural history. So I think my design was more a intuition based design, which was also based on observation. So I used to observe various around. And then I slowly learned the thumb rule of structural design, which was based on slenderness ratio. You see, L divided by 60 or 40 if it is a bending. So the earlier designs were very simple. There was not much of a calculation per se, what we call, because I was not knowing how to calculate certain things. And as you know, smaller structures like car parks and entrance canopies, nobody is also interested in doing a serious calculation and connection design. So one was intuition, other was experience, third was observation, and fourth was the thumb rule of the slenderness ratios. So these were the factors which helped me in doing design. And plus, the last thing I would like to say, I am somebody who had a, a kind of inferiority complex, you see, because I always felt that I am not educated, I do not belong to that class, coming from a lower middle class neighborhood, forced early to work. So I would always put in a little bit extra to cover over my fears. So that's where the design became safe, you see.
I see. Because the reason why I ask that question, sometimes when we do a new kind of project, uh, like we feel it's risky sometimes that we haven't been exposed in that area first. So that's why I
Yeah.
was wondering how.
Yes,
Uh,
Mayur, that is why, sir, I just wanted to add into this question. Because look, when you come from an artisan's or a craftsman's family and you are around people who have been doing this, your family is connected, and your father shares stories with you about some job and some work he had seen. So, there is always a background development happening in your mind about an idea of how things work and how to do it. So, that made me much more comfortable. And this was what I'll tell you is the initial part, dabbling around on tensile structures. And one more thing, if time permits, I would like to share is steel was okay because steel was being all around. The main challenge was the fabric and the cable and the form finding part. So there was no software, there was nothing, there was only Fry Auto, and there were his pictures on the internet. Unfortunately, I didn't take pictures, but what I did was, as I told you, I was a machinist. So the first conical structure I made, I got a small wooden piece and I machined into that shape. And then I pasted paper strips over it and cut them down so that they would represent the seam lines, and then unfolded and scaled it. So the inspiration all came from Frayato. He could do photo geometry. He could do soap bubble film models, minimal surface. All this was got from internet. All this was, more of an observation, trying it out, working out certain things, and then eventually, with a little bit of trial and error, it used to come out. Now, I was stuck one time because a normal geometrically pure structure where you have a cone peak in the middle is okay. All the patterns are same. But then one of my customers asked me, why don't you shift it off center? And all hell broke loose because you see, it was posing a different challenge. At that time, what I did was I made a one-on-one scale structure in my factory, and then I put in strings attached with similar weight all around the periphery representing seam lines. So I would measure then at every 1 meter distance, plot them out, make those patterns, weld it, and let me tell you, Mayur, it was almost there. It was almost good. So apart from calculations, if you want to have a form and a shape as we call in a minimal surface or an equally stressed surface, both ways work for tensile roofs. It worked. It worked. So that's how it all was the earlier part of trying to form find, trying to work out the equal stress fields, the patternings and the weldings, etc.
I see. And can you give us an overview about work of an engineer and what inspired you to become one?
Okay, as a description of Archineer, let me give a little bit brief about how this title came in and how Dr. Robotoff, the the director of Institute of Membrane and Shell Technologies, came with an idea. I was one of his first students and I was in the first course. So that's how I became the first Asian. So, so he's an architect and inspired by Frey Otto and others. And he always wanted to impart this knowledge to the world. And as you know, Germany being the hub of all initial development and of land of great minds who would, investigate, explore, then divide, then distribute it to the world. That's been coming from Germany. So he started all this and he realized, which was the truth about our industry, that you have to be an architect and you have to be an engineer at the same time. You cannot be two people and, set things back and forth, because tensile structures, the roof is the structure. It is not a cladding. The geometry plays an integral form in stability. Now, this is not the case with other normal structures, where the roofing is a covering substrate, is an imposed load. It doesn't play a part in the stability of the structure. But here in tensile structures, that's why they are called form dependent structures. So if you change the form, the force changes. And if you change the force, the form changes. So this interdependability between a form or a shape, which is an architect's domain, and a force, which is a domain of engineers, have to be clubbed together. And that is how he named this as an archineer, an architect, half engineer. But then I added some more to it. And my take on an archineer is that archineer is a craftsman. Because I am one. Archineer is a craftsman who thinks like an engineer, but is an artist at heart. So it is between an emotion and logic kind of thing which happens when you design such structures. So one has to be an engineer and at the same time be an artist and heart. So you need to let fly, let loose. Okay, a little bit more, let it put it a little bit more cantilever, let us raise this, let us toggle this. Engineers for their comfort would like to play safe between the zones, contain forces, only compression tension, no bending, good, no torsion, fantastic. But when you are designing like an engineer, but you're also allowing your heart to function at the same time. So archineer is about emotion and logic both coming together. And then we've seen all over the world fascinating structures, amazing structures which leave you in awe and amaze throughout the world. And these have all been works of people who have, you know you have let their artist inside them a little bit loose, and then the engineer follows at the same time.
When did you decide that you should go for Germany to study that?
Yeah. Well, when I started with the structures, and slowly it was the opening time in India, our economy had opened, and various people were now interested due to the reduced duty structures, so that imports had become viable, and they wanted what people are using in the Western world, and so there were orders coming in for larger structures. Now, this is where I was very uncomfortable, because I knew that. Smaller structures, it's okay. There are hundreds of examples and you can see and make and work out. So at this time, I started exploring and I bought a software for design analysis. And that was around 18 years back, 2002, 3. And the software package was Fortin from Gary Danza in Naples. He's also an architect and he did the development for form finding, patterning, and analysis of the membrane. Plus, some forces could be transferred from the membrane to the steel, so that steel can be designed in a different software and you can satisfy the codes. So I started that, and as I was communicating, the entire knowledge base was out of India, because that's why the company name Western Outdoor. It's not an Indian outdoor. Indian outdoor would be thatch roofs and mud roofs and wood and whatnot. Maybe Mangalore tiles even. But this was a Western kind of an outdoor. And I started looking out for seminars, workshops, periodicals, or journal submissions by PhD thesis. And during this course, I learned about this first course happening in Germany. So immediately my first reaction was to apply for it. But then I realized, oh gosh, I'm not an engineer, neither a graduate. So, but by that time I had 4 or 5 years of solid experience of lightweight structure design and understanding. So I wrote to Dr. Robotov. I was a bit scared and I wrote him my life story. And I told him, sir, I am interested in doing it. Even if you cannot give me a degree, I'm not interested in the degree because anyway, I am a craftsman. So I would like to do the course and understand the theory part. And he was gracious enough and he told me that, Daler, we will give you the same course. And of course, we cannot give you the degree, but we have coined this Archineer title. It's a title and it can be given to you. And so that's how it was. It was a win-win situation. And then I found out and joined the course. It was a 3 years professional course for professional people. So it had 6 2-week active periods. So 2 active periods every year, 3 years, so 6 active periods. And Dr. Robotov and his team did amazing work of lining up people expert from the industry, right from the design side, the architectural side, the material strength side, testing of materials, and on the other hand, experts from who were doing this work for 20, 30 years on about fabrication, about erection, about maintenance. So, Mayur, each and every aspect of the tensile structure industry was totally covered. And I believe that coming from India, such kind of practical education is missing, is missing. So I liked that, and I was like fish to water. I could get everything at one place.
Mhm. How does a day in your life look like?
Well, being a technocrat is not an easy job. You see, India is culturally very different from other countries. So there is a lot of demand from entrepreneurs, especially on the lower end of food chain or who are just, beginning. So you have to do multiple things. But I was more passionate about design and building both. So I would normally from the initial stages, I offloaded a lot of things like finance and project management and other logistics things, etc., to various people around me. And normally I start my day with a bit of prayer and meditation. And then it is simply structures, structures, and structures. So you can call me a workaholic. You know, I've heard many people talk about various things, and there have been various inspirations throughout my life. But it's a win win situation for me. So if somebody would say, what would you do as an hobby? I would say I would design a retractable structure which has not been done before. so so the same thing continued. So I do a lot of visualizing, lot of deliberation in the mind, wearing various hats and questioning myself, criticizing, trying to work it out. And then when I am up with something, I have to do the CAD drawings because I also learned CAD. Then I run it through the software, do a little bit of thumb rule calculations, come out with results. Now, this is as far as the structures are concerned. Now, this is every day. Then, post lunch, I have some time for my office, some communication with the clients, and eventually, after 5 p.m., I'm back to structures. So, where I left over in the morning, then I start challenge myself again. Because I remember my father used to share with me about his journey, and he used to say that my pet name is Lucky. So he used to say, Lucky Singh, do not cheat yourself, be true to yourself, and the structures you make become part of your creation. So they are like babies and they speak to you. So you do something with your heart and passion. Don't be a financial man, because we are not. And this is a traditional craftsman talk from a father to son. If you see some potter speaking to his son, or a tailor speaking to the traditional craftsmen around India, and we were blacksmiths and carpenters. So he used to tell me, your structures speak to you. At that young age, I was wondering how structures speak to me. And then he told me, look, an overlook you do would always be visible to you. Always. Nobody else might know. But that is how the structure would speak. Hey, you could do this, but you didn't do it. You didn't do it. So, so when I do a design, I do a rethink that how would this structure speak to me? What would it say if it was a person kind of and would express? So, it's not a rational way of thinking. It's not an engineer's way of thinking. It's not a, methodical way of thinking. But as I told you, I'm a bit emotional guy on the one side. And these are the truths of my life, which I would like to share. Be honest about it. So that's how it is. That's how the day is. And then eventually I have some social, I'm involved in social service. I'm involved in various organizations of charity, as well as in my own housing society. And coming from a Sikh community, we are very tightly knit around. So we have our Gurdwara. So every Sunday is Gurdwara day, half a day. And then daytime also, I try to take responsibility. So in today's time, it is a lot more about giving back rather than receiving. Earlier, it was all receiving, all trying to grab whatever comes my way. So today at this age, it's a lot about giving.
That's quite inspiring. And my next question would be, if you can name one book which had the biggest impact in your life, what would that be and why?
Ah, well, there were many books, but the most inspiring book as a design build person, I've seen over the period of years the evolution of human history. When we first came out of the caves and wanted a roof over our head, and as you go through the history, you can see the mindset of humanity, how people tried to holistically understand it. And so holistic understanding is, there were two books actually, and both by Mario Salvadori, Why Buildings Stand Up and Why Buildings Fall Down. And these were given to me by a friend who was with me at the same time in the German university 2 decades back. And he gifted me this books. He came to know that I'm a craftsman and not an engineer, and he was a civil engineer working for the New York Municipal Corporation. So he got this book. So he told me, "Hey Dala, you should read this, boss. This is a person who was thinking like you. Look what he has written." And Mayur, let me tell you, amazing books. You know, it is like Mario had put in converge the entire learnings of humanity with respect to structures, compressed them, made it into a tangible, bite-sized, digestible chunks, and he's offering it to you. So for people like me who are from the, I think it would be for anyone for the sake who would like to understand the holistic approach of geometry and strength of materials, and the combination of these two, which is an outcome of an aesthetically pleasing and stable structure. These two books are must read. I would not like to say Ayn Rand and the Fountainhead. Yes, people are passionate about it. It's a good book. I'm a voracious reader. I could read a lot. But for me, the craftsman inside me was excited, was motivated, was amazed. And the most important part is he could understand. You see, when a book is trying to say something, always to you, and if you can understand that, that is absolutely amazing. So these two books are highly and strongly recommended.
Mhm. Any mentors or role model who made a significant contribution in your life?
Well, as I have mentioned you, I was not blessed enough to have formal education. When you have formal education, your professors and your guides are where you start your roots. But for me, my guides and mentors was, yes, first was my father, who could give me the inputs about a lot of things. And he was also a very holistic person. Then there were so many people. I'm blessed, amazingly blessed with having my higher power, you know, surrounding with me with so many people who would guide me, who would point directions to me, like Mr. Damodar Mal, who could, with just a small part he played in my life, change the course of my life. Then there is Dr. Robotov from the IMS. Then there was one fine friend of mine, Ingo Lischke, whom I had met in one of the workshops. He was a German craftsman like me, and he would always be there for me. Hey, Dalar, ask me, no problem. Although we were competitors in some aspect, but he would always be willing to share knowledge. So, over a course of people, these were a few inspiring people to me also. When I say me also, because that's how it is always. That's how it is always. Inspiration is coming, motivation is coming. But then, if you just go into your shell of ego and I, it's lost. It's lost. And then I would just out of context, I would put my Guru Nanak Dev Ji, as a great mentor and motivator. Because if I see his writings, they talk about open mindedness, they talk about honesty, they talk about willingness. And you see, there is nothing which is already frozen. You go out, you explore, you have to walk your journey. Destiny is what happens, but you have to be walking around. You have to work for common welfare. In Punjabi we say sarbat da pala. You have to talk about common welfare, and knowledge has to be freely shared. So starting from my family, my religion, to the people I was around with, the as if I reflect, I think that as if the world is converging to help me. You see, that is how blessed I feel. Of course, there were incidents where I would be perturbed and I would be, disturbed. But these incidents taught me more than the helpful incidents.
Mhm. And I think that perfectly dives into my next question, which is, can you share challenges faced in your career and how did you resolve it?
Oh, well, the challenges are on various fronts, because when you are kind of acting responsibly, and when you come off the experimental projects, because in the initial stages, people also know I have never hidden my facts with anybody. And it's upfront that I tell them that I am a craftsman, I've been doing this work, these are my projects, and this is my method of approach. So as soon as the project's becoming serious, then there are challenges, technical challenges, technical challenges like the testing facilities, which are external, which has to be made internal also. Then as and as these spans become bigger, you see, a lot of other things come into play. A smaller structures, you would not talk about the surface oscillation. You would simply go ahead, banade kind of stuff. But when the surface becomes bigger and bigger, there are so many smaller things which start playing a major role. So there were, one part was technical challenges. So to overcome that, I had always a list of consultants, look, who were experts. Because my father had once told me, you are never an expert by yourself. You may have the idea, you may be able to do it, but there are people who are more experts than you, and you have to take them on board. You have to ask them, don't try to be, jack of all trades and try to do everything. Smaller things are different, but when it grows bigger, it's a different thing altogether. So to overcome these challenges, I would always help, whether professionally, paid, or whatsoever. In fact, Mayur, most of the bigger structures are always vetted by universities and IITs and structural proof engineers. So these were technical one. Then on the other hand side, it was manufacturing. So manufacturing, bringing in those machineries, which cost the bomb at that time. In the beginning, if you have to invest in, and you don't even know how a guy supplying from Sweden is going to support your machineries. And at that time, my comfortable with mechanical machineries came into the fort, and I could get in those stuff with respect to manufacturing. Then there was challenges with respect to training of people for erection methodology, because everything is so interdependent. It is step by step, but it is still complicated with tensile structures. So training of those people, again, I was fortunate enough to be a craftsman, and most of my earlier structures were all done by me with the help of some people who were just assisting me, because I would like to feel the tension and feel whether it's a top surface, whether it is equal, whether it is overstressing or not. So then I made a quality control list based on the inputs plus the discussions at my university, the IMS. The IMS was a great challenge diffuser, you see. So somebody who is looking into tensile structures as a professional career should absolutely be there. Absolutely be there. So the entire do's and don'ts, and eventually there were a lot of failures. There are failures. There will be failures because you see, it's a vulnerable material that you are working with. It's a very flexible substrate, and one corner being overstressed, and you don't know, and it will rip off. So with the experience, with the resources available, and what I would say is that one is passionate about it, so he would have a very open mind to, you know, introspect and then ask for help and then rectify it. So these were some of the challenges in the career and the way I found to resolve it.
Hmm. So I think like collaboration was a key aspect where you took help from different experts and resolved it. And how did you manage the stress, which sometimes due to some projects, it might be a tense situation?
Well, that's a very different dimension altogether. I've learned in life that expecting too much from yourself and from others is always going to land you up in trouble. So speak out, ask for help. That is a sign of maturity, not of, inferiority of or something else. Now, coming from here, I would feel stress, yes, because when you come into a professional domain where deliveries and timelines and so many things are now much more important, an experimental stage, people would allow you because it's okay. But as a professional, stress builds up. And like you said, sharing it with people. I have made somehow, I don't know how, because I was never educated in the management techniques or those kind of things. But somehow there is a professional team around me who are much more expert than me in their particular area of domain. So it is like I can share everything and anything with them. We can talk about it and then work out a practical way to handle a situation, because things do go wrong. It is never a smooth running if you're especially working in tensile structures. Because I would just want to put emphasis on this. Internationally, we've seen many companies go bankrupt in the industry of tensile structure. Larger companies change hands, you see, and this happens frequently. It's not a once in a lifetime phenomena. It happens because even if a smaller thing goes wrong on a larger structure, the implications are tremendous. Just to give you an example out of context, how stress would build, the Millennium Dome, the fabric, the patterning was wrong. And eventually, the cost of fabric which was needed to rectify the whole thing wanted the company to be sold. So the point is, when you are working for such high stakes project, there is definitely stress. But then I believe if you have run it through your mind, which normally everybody does, you run it through your mind many times, try to do and pros and cons, but then certainly there is an element of risk which needs to be taken. There is an unknown, or what you can call the management people call the gray, the unknown. Your ability to handle the unknown is proportional to your ability of handling stress. So that's how I have been doing. And then, of course, you have your quiet time here. How can I miss that? You have your quiet time where you connect to yourself, which I do every day. And there are many incidents, and where various ways of means. I believe one thing strongly. When you are struck against a wall in any one dimension of your life, there are many other ways where you can walk ahead. And one of them has been service to humanity. I have been stuck many times in projects, but to overcome that, what I have done is I have always worked for people. I try to help people, go to my community, go to my gurdwara, do service, and that has again given me courage, the hope to come back again the next day or maybe a week later and then ask myself, okay, now here we stand. What are the options? And I believe, Mayur, somehow today, I believe there are options always. But unfortunately, the options we pick or choose do not work. And the options which are working may be ego deflating. Maybe they want you to accept your mistakes or something which I avoid. And when I avoid those, that is where the stress shoots up. Acceptance of fact, willingness to remedy it always has been the trick which has worked for me. Always.
Now we will move into our next section in which we'll discuss about your professional work and projects. So can you give us an overview about work of Western Outdoor Structures?
Well, we started very small, and that's how it was. And as things went on moving, men, machineries, techniques, software started falling. And I was blessed with being one of the few who would be the early birds in the industry. And due to that, we could get a lot of work around. And so, as the work started becoming more intricate and interesting, started adding more people, more consultants. Of course, coming from India, there is always a constraint of comparison when people compare tensile structures with any normal tin roof shed. And at one point of time, you are frustrated, boss. These are two different things. And I remember the first stadium I did. It was like the indoor cricket stadium. They were not willing to believe in a tensile roof because it would tear off and it would puncture and it would catch fire. So I had to take a lot of time in making them comfortable with an idea that a 4,000 square meter roof, which is made of a simple covered by a piece of cloth, which can eventually be cut by a scissor. People used to ask me, can you cut it? Well, how do I make it if I don't cut it? So apprehensions, taking that out, and eventually started into projects. So projects started becoming wider span and bigger. And you see, we've been able to do almost 13 cricket stadium roofs. Although, let me be very frank and honest with you, they are mostly of modular construction and not like a cable net structure, which like Bergerman would design and biomembrane would build or Fresinet would come in, because cable nets are something beyond where it's a different scale altogether. But you talk about functional tensile structures for a country like India, given the financial constraints, yes, I have always tried to upgrade myself to various materials and technologies. That has been, I think, one of the hallmarks of Western outdoor, or my thought process, or it had happened. So, what we do is now retractable roofs. As I come from a mechanical background, mechanical things are like, in fact, I would just like to share with you that presently I am designing an roof for an entire cricket stadium which would be entirely retractable. You see, move around, turn around, and trying to make it stable as well as bring it into the Indian prices. So there were various malls, there were various canopies. In fact, I made the first tent structure in India around 20 years back, and it was an aluminum hanger, which is quite common. But I got it designed, I got it checked, I downloaded codes from Messe Frankfurt. You see, that's one authority which sanctions all exhibition structures. So I tried to work that out. That was good. I made a cable. We've been able to make a cable hung sliding roofing shed, which was for Ajmer Dargah. One of the most famous dargahs in India where millions and millions of people come in. Then retractable structures, fixed structures, large spans. Well, we almost don't say no to anything. More challenging the better.
Mhm. When you were sharing about your projects, I realized that it might have been very challenging to do this kind of lightweight structures first because of lack of technology and resources, and also it becomes difficult to convince client that it's stable and how this lightweight structure solution might be better than the conventional one. So how did you manage to work around that constraint?
This constraint, I remember Mr. Ravi Mehta. Mr. Ravi Mehta is one person. He's the guy who developed the tensile structure industry in India. He was the distributor. He is a distributor for Serge Ferrari. They are one of the largest fabric manufacturers around the world, and they make beautiful stuff. Really amazing engineering and they are also so passionate about what they do as manufacturers of membranes. So he had requested me for this Indore project. And believe me, Mayur, they gave me the price, same price that they gave it for the steel guy. And whether it is fabric, whether it is imported, whatnot, we don't care. You have to first match the price. Then you have to give a 10-year written bond, legally enforceable. If anything happens, you will replace everything free of cost. So I had to do both the things. Because as you see, when there are no references at all in India, people go abroad and you go to Europe and you go to developed countries and you can see a lot of stuff. But then coming back home, the culture is different. The concept of security is different. The risk taking appetite is different. And as you rightly said, convincing a client, a stadium owner committee to, go into this new material, which would look absolutely amazing, but at the same time, trying to tell them that this would be much better than the tin roof or a solid roof which they are trying to build. So it was always like compromising and risk taking ability. And that is how it all began. So It began with me making a loss on one of my bigger projects, but Mr. Ravi Mehta, being a very good mentor and would guide me a lot of times, he told me, Lucky, Daler, look, this is like a continuous advertisement. You think like that, and you are paying a lakh of rupees for a full page advertisement every year. And that is what it made possible.
A lot of times when we see such kind of lightweight structures in European countries, this kind of structures are very artistic and very challenging. So, and it comes with an additional cost compared to conventional structures, just to show how beautiful it can be. Do you think in India there might be clients who would be ready to pay that premium, or is there any way in future or in now if someone wants to do that?
I see it two ways. One is the standards of manufacturing. You see, so there is a minimum benchmark for every country or for every region around the world. So, coming from a developed country to a developing country, you would always see the difference, you know. So, that is one difference. The second part is now tensile structures are very, you see, they are always eye catching because of being different, because of being of a flowing form and shape. So, these are far and few. For example, for every 100 structures, there would be hardly two or three fabric structures around, because it is not a replacement for so many things. It has to be used wherever it is appropriate, wherever it would add value, wherever, functional as well as aesthetic, both parts are required. And mostly that's why you see them in recreational facilities and sports facilities, because that is where you want the people to be cheerful, you know and still the roof to be functional. And when you come around at such kind of space, then of course you can spend. Normally we see the architectural detail more prominent in landmark structures, because that is why they were designed to look like that. And at the same time, if you see the other 98 functional structures, they, even tensile structures, they would look like any other structure to you. So there are few structures where a lot of detailing has been made, and there are maximum structures which follow the standards. And as I told you earlier, the standards also differ because of the price constraint. So what happens in India is, then we cannot have all stainless steel, because then it would push up the prices. So we'll have steel, we'll have it painted, we might have it galvanized. Now then there are other issues, like if you want to have a high profile laser cutting which would give you finishing, whereas comparatively another way of manufacturing. So eventually all these things make a little contribution, but then comparatively the prices are also different. But yes, as I would like to talk about the industry per as a whole, the industry is going towards towards ETFE, towards cushions, towards trying to explore much more various things that can be done.
Can you walk us through one of your build project? What was your approach, challenges faced in that project, and final output?
Correct. Okay, so I will just try to share that with you. The most challenging were the smaller projects which I did earlier, because as and as I grew comfortable, things became started becoming easy. Because what is challenging and what is comfortable is a individual perspective. Somebody who is very experienced, you know can do something which looks so intricate, but he's become used to it, he's experienced. And at the same time, a newcomer looking at a simple structure also keeps on wondering how this has been done, how this has been done. I would share the screen with you.
Mhm.
It is my earliest structures, and it had a lot of complexity. If you see this structure, This was around 17 years back. And this was one of the complex structures at those times, which was done without patterning and without form finding. So this form was derived from what you call a spandex model, a lycra model. I made a lycra model. And so if you see, this is a deployable structure with a space frame skeleton. So this space frame could be open. It was one of the exhibition companies called Inside Outside, and they do architectural exhibition. So they wanted an iconic structure to be put up every time they put in an exhibition. And this was the space frame they had, the material. So I had to do the entire construction into the shape. The shape was briefly given by the architect who wanted it. But then, converting this, it was like, first of all, the main base frame, which cannot have larger foundations because it is deployable. You need to easily pull it off the ground. So that was the first part of the skeleton. Now this allowed a four-sided entry, since it was a central canopy for registering people who are going into the exhibition and out. That was another part, to leave wider spaces open. So there was restriction on using kind of pillars, you see. You cannot use one in the middle and stuff. After that, there are two different shapes on the top and side. Now this needs to be tensioned. This needs to be form found, and the apparatus, the fixity has to be very flexible. It can be easily opened, packed again, and after a month erected again back. So this was unlike a normal tent. A normal tent where you have a cadre system and an aluminum section and you pull the fabric through it and that's it. You can do it hundreds of times. But here this was a shape, and again, now when this is going to be erected, it was to be done by the regular people who would do the work for this company. So they were not trained or professional kind. So there had to be a training. So a step by step manual, a descriptive one of what to do first, how to unroll the fabric, which end to be connected first. So an entire thought process, although had it been a fixed structure, it would have not been difficulty. But I was on the learning curve. This was a deployable structure. This was supposed to be erected by people who are not so skilled, and this was supposed to be used many times. And then I need to get the surface smooth and the tensions right all the time. So there was amazing number of hours that I put in, a lot many hours that I put in. And eventually I, with the help of my team, was able to work out each and every detail, make connections typical. Now here was another challenge, because if you have 15 different connections and 15 types of bolt with such kind of deployable structure, there is chances of missing 10 or maybe one, and then you don't know what size it was and you come back. So I had to make all the bolts identical. Now if I make the connections identical, the forces are different. So what do? So you put more number of bolts. You see, same size but more. So that's how it was done. The flexible edge system. Then the clamping system was also very unique. I remember I didn't use much of aluminum sections or profiles at that time, which are now standardly used. But an effective system, a fabricated one, was made. And well, that's how it is, including, the folding of the fabric, how to fold the fabric so that when you unfold it, you get the right corner which goes where. It is not that you open the fabric and then you try to figure out, okay, you reverse it and you revolve it, those kind of stuff. So for me, this was very challenging, and this structure taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. And in fact, this is what I had presented when I was called for interview in the university to judge whether I am teachable or whether I have experience of tensile structures, whether I have an understanding. Because it is not for not for general engineers and architects. You need to have a fair bit of understanding of structures, what you are going to learn more about. So this is one structure. Other small structure which I would like to share with you is, which was challenging, uh, because challenges come in small packages, Mayur. One more structure which I would like to share with you. Now, it is called the Delhi Haat. And now the idea of the team was, they wanted to make a marketplace representing an Indian village marketplace where the artisans could come with their stuff, rent out a small opening, display it, and in the evening take it off, or maybe keep it for a fortnight or Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of stuff. So what they had envisioned was that they wanted to, there are these sewage pipes, where they wanted to just cut an opening of a 2-meter diameter pipe, put it vertically up, and then cover it with fabric. And eventually, the architectural team realized that there is something called Indian standard codes, which asks you to put in wind pressure regardless of whatever you're using, because this is a pub. So safety becomes prime importance. So I got into picture at a later stage. But then the most important part which I could contribute over here towards the stability is keeping the form and shape. If you can see my pointer over here, I created various valleys, low points. And on these low points, I could put in a cable and make a huge block foundation below it, and then tension the entire structure down to earth. So these vertical constructions, which were just of 100 mm, single brick construction, they were sandwiched between the ground foundation and my structure. So I compressed them, I pre-tensioned them, and that is how I was able to maintain stability of the entire system for the uplift of the wind, whatever come it may. And this was took a lot of thinking, because these were very small cones. You see, they are hardly 10 square meters each, but the numbers were huge, and the clusters were placed in a free form kind of a geometry where you could, nothing was kind geometrically pure. So the stability part was done. Then smaller structures, patterning, welding, and erection is always difficult, because if you have a 50-meter fabric and you go off by 0.5%, it forgives you. But the same thing if you do for a 5-meter fabric and you go 0.5% wrong, it becomes big. So smaller structures, much more difficult to make than larger structures. And then when you have site specific constraints, when you have agencies working individually, not connecting anywhere, then you come out with something which eventually comes onto your head to solve it. But yes, I'm grateful that I could come out with a solution which works, which is stable, and which looks absolutely amazing. So these were two small projects which I would like to talk about. There are many, because why I say many is because all of those 322 odd projects that I have made, everything has been conceived by me alone, because I am the principal originator from where it all begins, you see. So I know them, they are my babies, like I know them, what I have made, where did it go?
Yeah, these are very beautiful structures. Yeah.
Now this one I would like to talk about. This was the Lucknow Cricket Stadium using different colored. Are you able to see it, Mayur?
Yep.
Okay. Now here, if you see, I would like to talk about the structural challenges. If you see, these spans are quite big, and this is almost like 20,000 square meters of the roof area. So I had to put in valley cables, and then the architect wouldn't allow me to put in a cable in the center, because then he didn't want to see the line. And even I was of the opinion that, of course, when you're doing something, and why put a scar on it? So in this curve, my in place put in two cables with this curve. Now, when you realize or when you visualize that when the wind uplift is going to come and your cable is not straight, the stresses it would create would tear off the cable pocket out, and then eventually there would be no cable, because the cable is connected to the fabric through a pocket. It's a very technical kind of stuff. Now, to overcome that, I spoke with quite a few people. One of them is Martin Brown, and he has developed the software which I am using, and he used to work for Bird Air. So I have a US connection. He worked for Bird Air for almost 20 years. And then we could work out a pocket which would take those stresses and still allow flexibility. You see, stability and flexibility both. Now, in other structures, stability means rigidity, means you make it more compact. You know, you make it sure, and you give a higher safety factor. But in tensile structures, these are large deflection structures. You have to allow deflection, you have to allow movement, and at the same time, the transfer of forces should happen. So there is a lot of hinge connection coming in, lot of hinge connection, and there were this cable and then the connection at the bottom. These were two things which made this entire structure very challenging and very interesting. And well, most of the times, this is almost 4 years old now. It had upstood one storm, because whenever there is heavy wind, you know, the coastal area structures, next day I'm calling that engineer, hey Padmanabha, is the fabric still there or it has flown off? Because recently, 2 years back, there was a storm in Chennai, in the southern part of India. And there were two structures close by. One was for the Chidambaram Stadium, made by an international company, and the other one was made by yours truly. I called up that guy and I asked him whether the fabric is still there, and he was like, excited. Hey, Dalar Singh, yes, yes, it is there. Because you see, these are vulnerable structures, vulnerable to vandalism, vulnerable to not winds. But the major part is when you have sharp flying objects with the wind. You know, a piece of tin shed, which is coming with a high velocity wind of maybe 100 kilometers an hour. It cannot be high, but still it can make it lift. And if it hits the roof, then you have a puncture. And if there is a puncture and the roof is in tension, then there is a tear propagation. So normally for such kind of larger structures, it is imperative in design to work out redundancy. So assuming that one panel has been torn, so one panel takes 50% of the load and other panel can take full load. This has to be, so that makes you much more comfortable for eventualities and various kinds of issues which are going to come up. So that's how it is.
I think like those all structures are really pleasing in terms of aesthetics, as well as the shapes are so natural and sleek that one would like to go to that stadium and spend more time. And my next question would be like, from all these projects, what was your major lesson learned, and is there any project you wish you would have done differently?
Well, coming from curious mind, I would like to do a lot of work on my existing projects. That is always the feeling. Because as you know, when you start with a project, you start with an idea. But then there are various conditions and you start making a compromise to adjust to that situation, whether it is codal requirement, whether it is clients or time constraint or financial requirements, or even lack of resource, the availability of stuff. So there are various compromises which the heart says should not be done. But if they are not done, then you ain't moving further. So honestly speaking, I would like to improve on every project that I have done, because I always do a retro thinking. I always do a retro thinking and challenge myself, because when I started, there was nobody to challenge me or ask me questions because nobody knew it. So I had to generate a critic in myself who would challenge me. If this is too simple, forget it. This doesn't fit with your vision. And if I make something too complicated, then the craftsman inside would say, you designed it, but how are you going to make it? Who is going to make it for you? You know? So this was my internal conflict. As far as structures are concerned, yes, a lot of improvement can be done, because as you see, tensile structures are live structures. And coming from a craftsman point of view, when you are doing it and then you realize, okay, this could have been done a little bit better, this could have been replaced. So that feeling is always there.
My next question is, what are some upcoming projects for Western Outdoor Structures?
Okay, now two interesting projects which I would like to speak over here. One is a retractable glass roof which we are making in the northern part of India. And it's more of a mechanical and an issue of economy versus the option of retractability. Okay, so it's more of trying to, use local materials smartly, effectively, techniques, so that you can achieve more in less, and give a solution to a country specific solution. That is one. And second is making deployable airport buildings. So that I just want to mention over here that last year there was, yes, last year only, we were awarded a small canopy work of say maybe 4,000 square meters for Guwahati Airport. And as you know, in India, when a minister wants to visit, everything is fatafat done, you know. So I got it and I made it before time. And while doing it, I did not compromise on quality, because I believe I am blessed with lot of resources and I have to use them for the betterment of my projects. And at that time, I met the chairman of the Airport Authority of India, and he awarded a company for beautiful and before time project. So while we were discussing, I gave him this idea that our prime minister wants to build up so many airports in such a short period of time. And I told him that why don't you have something which can be called an evolving airport? So you start with a small facility which is transferable, which can even expand to a certain stage if the decisions are not coming. And once you want to build in a permanent building of a certain size, you know the traffic and you are comfortable to invest. And then we take this structure up and go to your new site. So this structures, the skeleton and the fabric, etc., can be reused maybe 50 times, maybe for the 15-year life cycle of the product. You can easily use it. So now is the time when I'm thinking about it. So I'm so very happy, although in this lockdown, yesterday I was alone sitting till I think 2 in the night. So that's where I got late today. So I was work out various possibilities. And of course, it has to be green, it has to be recyclable, it has to leave minimum footprint. All said and done, the major challenge what I see in designing these kind of structure is trying to maximum use locally produced materials, rather than have something which can be bought it from here and there. That is not where the creativity is. Using local resources and local materials. So I have come out with some interesting comparisons: material versus material, time versus time, cost versus cost, deployability, specialist requirement, then the functional part. Now, uh, cost of energy. For example, if you take a temporary structure, you can simply put in a small tent and finish it off. It's okay if you are going to keep it for 4 days or 15 days, because then you can have a high energy cost and low capex. That balances. but you cannot do the same thing for 3 years. So the approach, although I am a simple guy who can design structures, but then the ability to see it completely is what is needed, and that is what people trust me for. And I think that is what I am responsible for. I have to talk everything about my project. I'm not a salesman. I cannot simply talk about the good things and try to sell somebody. I've never done that, because internally I need to feel justified, because there is a soul inside me and that needs to be satisfied. So I have to take a lot of things into picture. Taking that's very challenging. And there are a lot of architects now who are very good friends, starting from architect Nilab from Hafiz Contractor, architect Vivek Bole, Sanjay Puri. They all become friends now, understanding the skills needed. So that is the second most interesting project, and done properly, it should be what I call, it could become a benchmark for a lot of developing countries. I'm looking at Africa. I'm looking at other countries who are still a little bit behind us or on the similar path, have similar culture and similar constraints with respect to money available, with respect to materials availability. So these two structures are what taking up my time.
Okay. And according to you, what are some roadblocks faced by building industry to construct tensile structures?
Well, if I have to simply list it out, A is acceptance. Although with the incoming of development of IT industry, when a lot of campuses from US, etc., would come, and these would be normal for them. So the acceptability was very high, but in general acceptability. Second part is the what you call the non-availability of trust from the industry to architects and engineers. Because as you see, last 20 years, the industry has evolved and there are a lot of people trying to experiment, and then there are some failures. Now, these failures eventually give a wrong impression. And so an architect who is trying to specify may think twice about it. Third part is maintenance. Now, look, if you have something beautiful, it needs to be maintained to make it, keep it looking beautiful. Now, maintenance in India is an alien concept, and that too of roof. Facades we will be able to clean with a gondola, but why do we need to clean a roof? And I have to tell them, because it's a skylight. Normal roof, you're not able to see what is below the roof, what is above the roof. It's flat. You put in a ceiling and finish it. But here you are using it as a skylight, so there is going to be dust, and that is very common in a tropical country. So a structure which is looking good today, after 5 days, starts looking shabby. So that's one more roadblock. Then I think I talked about the manufacturing capacity of the industry per se. I'm not talking about a certain 2 or 3 companies, but when you are talking about industry as a whole, and the availability of fabricators and designers as a whole, then there is a roadblock. It is not like that you have quality people. I think these are 4 major roadblocks. Fifth maybe, which we are trying to form an association of our industry. I was in touch with IFI and various other TensiNet and associations, and eventually now we are gathering up. So the codal requirements, we don't have codes as far as Indian codes are concerned. So in government jobs, now we have been flexible in allowing British and American codes or Euro codes per se. So on a technical point of view, yes. Then there are relative facilities like testing. So when something is fully evolved, you have the entire support industry gamut with it. And that is what makes the client the specifier, and the users, everybody comfortable, because it has evolved and you ask a question and it can be explained with a logic and with supporting documents. So these are now 5 major roadblocks that we are looking at for this industry to really explode.
Okay. Now we will move on to our final section in which we'll discuss about advice to students and young professionals. So, Mr. Singh, what is the best advice you have received till date?
Be honest and true to yourself. Never hide what you don't know. And that's what being honest is all about. So that's the best advice I have received. And that's always there at my heart, wherever I am.
Mhm. And what will be your advice to students and professionals who are interested in this area?
Be honest, true to yourself. Because, it's a fundamental truth about how we think, how we project, how we act. So if you are comfortable in your skin, you are honest to yourself that you would like to do this thing, for the rest of your life. You are tuned to the dynamics and the stress requirement, and then you go in for it, whatever it is. I believe you will be successful. Because if it is just for money, it is just for prestige, it is just for power, these things fade away after some time. Money can be earned, then you don't have any need for money. So will you keep on doing the same work? Okay, you receive some awards and you are there. Okay, you are powerful, you are uh, leading the industry. Then what? But the passion and the conviction of yourself that this is what I am going to do, this is what I would like to be old with, grow up old with. I might sound a bit emotional, but this has been my way of thinking. And this is what I've been doing. So, this is what I would say. I would not quote somebody, I would quote myself.
Mhm. And how can one develop knowledge or expertise in this area when they are young?
Well, today, with the world being connected, a lot of is available. Rather, I would say information is available. When this information is processed and you start experimenting and you derive your own answers, then it converts into knowledge. So, if somebody is looking at it seriously, I would recommend this industry, the tensile structure industry. It is exciting. It is where the future of construction has to go in with respect to the lightweight industry. And I would like to quote Fry Otto here. He was wishing that one of the first structures on moon or any other planet would be a fabric structure. If mankind decides to shift from Earth, okay, we'll go to Mars. Hey, come on. So, do you think we'll take cement concrete with us? No. We'll take a flexible piece of cloth with some cables and some poles and go there and stretch it out and say we have arrived. So you see, it's one good way to look at it. So it's an interesting industry. Now there are fabrics being developed which would generate electricity. You see, kind of weaving solar stuff into the fabric itself. So there is a lot of stuff going on around. So if one is truly inclined towards this industry and it is satisfying his own quest for architecture and structural side, he should be committed. And once he's committed, I don't see, apart from the normal learning curves and all that kind of stuff, yes, but it's good.
Yeah. And I think partly you have answered this question as well. So if a student is planning to do something like student want to design a lightweight structure in their design studios, what are some tools they should be aware of?
There are a lot of plugins available with SketchUp, with Rhino, and now since everybody is using Karamba and Kangaroo and going parametric, so it's easily available. But I would like to advise students to go to a manufacturing facility, make themselves available and convince the owners so they can take them to erection sites. Look, dabbling around with shapes is all possible. You can become an artist, but you're not going to hang the structure on the wall. You have to build it. You have to understand the criticalities, the entire stuff. So if a person invests a lot more time over there, and then when he comes back and sits on a computer and tries to make a form, he will be able to understand whether this satisfies the functional requirement or not. Because then it would be just a form. And we are talking about form plus function both. So a functional form. And functional form is dependent on so many other things, which eventually you realize. So my advice to students would be to find out your nearest manufacturer. So whenever you have time between semesters or whatnot, go over there, request him, and look around. Then once you become serious, there is the Institute of Membrane and Shell Technologies, which has a professional course, which has also a short tensile intense course. But normally for that, you need to have some experience and some working. So that is where you can get the maximum out of it. Find a manufacturer, spend time with him. Meanwhile, dabble on with forms and shapes. Go out to the internet. There are various topic submissions. You can download them, read about it, read about the form finding, the design aspect, the connection detailing, the structural aspect, the structural detailing as well as analysis. Because Mayur, what I believe is, as you see, the world is compressing a lot of things. You see, earlier there used to be many people working on a project. Now we call it multitasking. Okay? But forget about multitasking. You need to be able to understand a lot more things, compress it together. So people who are from the architectural industry, I would suggest them to be a little bit more serious about structural engineering. Even thumb rule engineering helps. So you can derive sizes and you won't miss much. You see, I've seen architects who would just make a 2-inch pipe for a 50-meter structure. They want to be happy visualizing that it's floating in the sky. But is it the truth? It is not. So if you are more on that side, and to the structural engineers, the students who are from the structural engineer side, I would request them to be more artistic. Straight lines and curves, okay. But now go anticlastic, go free form, let yourself fly a bit. So these two things combined would prepare one person, the mindset and mentality, to look forward towards exploring it a full-time one.
I see. And are there any lightweight structures in India you would recommend students to visit to learn from their observations and get to know about the details?
Well, there are a lot of smaller structures in various campuses now coming up. The smaller structures speak more loudly because, like a child who has a loud voice, smaller structures speak more loudly. So, I would say that if on the bigger structure scale, the Motera Stadium, which has come up, a fantastic cable net structure, people around Gujarat, then the Statue of Unity, for which we did a lot of work as far as fabric welding is concerned. That is one good example. and it's a public place, so you can have a win-win situation. You go around, have fun, look at Iron Man statue, and also see this interesting structures around. Then the JLN Stadium in New Delhi, again built by Thiomembrane Corporation. It's an interesting piece of engineering where you can see the compression tension, the purity of forces being taken. So these are few structures, and if you are in Delhi, do visit Delhi Heart, the smaller tent-like structures, and they will also speak with you. The structures, I mean.
I see. And lastly, is there any question you never get asked but would like to answer?
It's a very introspective question. Huh? Actually, Mayur, since the last many years, I have been in public dominion, and I do take workshops in engineering colleges as well as architectural colleges, and people do call me an entrepreneur who has come from a very meager background and evolved into a respected figure. My story, I understand that my story is very interesting, very inspiring, and it's all about the higher power which has been working. So there have been n number of questions asked many times, just casually. And I've been very honest and open about even, speaking about my apprehensions and fears and whatever I have in mind. So I don't think there is much left as far as the professional side is concerned. Yes, people ask, have you ever made mistakes? I say, yes, I do it every time. And many of the mistakes cannot be rectified. I live with them, but whatever can be rectified, I have the courage to go ahead and do it. And then when you talk about mistakes, now the mistakes can be on the quality and look front, but not on the stability front. So
On personal side,
yeah, personal sides, how to deal with your fears. Because look, when you are upfront, like for example, you are interviewing me and I am kind of playing a role because it is expected for me to be inspiring, motivating, and talk about myself. But then what I believe is how you deal with your fears and insecurities is what makes you comfortable in your skin. Because happiness everybody wants here. Failures who wants? Now professional failures are one part, but then there are personal failures. There are various dimensions to life, like social and physical, and there is a moral dimension, and then there is one dimension which is professional. So it is just 1/4 of your life. So 1/4 depends on 3/4. 3/4 does not depend on 1/4. This nobody has asked. So my courage, if I would like to honestly put across, comes from a lot of sources which have been silently working for my betterment. The family is there, the society is there. Then, of course, for believers, it's about religion and it's about community. I would like to say that from the first day itself, try to live a balanced life. Of course, the priorities do change when you are young and you are looking, and the world is not with an holistic attitude. The world is about like parts and pieces, that you are young now, you are supposed to do labor, you are supposed to work, you are supposed to learn. And then we put in a lot of time in universities and colleges, and then when you come out, you say put in n numbers of year working. But since the beginning stage itself, one has to learn balance in life. If your 3/4 is strong enough, the 1/4 will be a smooth ride. You see, but if your 1/4 is very strong and then you are at loss on the 3/4, it is always going to pinch you. It is always going to be effective because we are first human beings and then we are architects, engineers. That's division of labor. That's simple as that. But what one needs to learn to is to become a good human being. That should be the first and foremost criteria. And to give our insecurities, they make us pile up things, They make us want unwanted things. They make us aware of the competition. What I have still not got is lost in the mind. So one has to understand that yes, the world is providing. As the universe is expanding till it goes back, the world is also going to expand. There is availability. Maybe the nature of work may change. You see, last 400, 500 years, and the nature has worked, changed with the wars, with the industrial revolutions, with the agrarian revolutions, with the evolution of mankind. You see, now with the IT industry comes. So it should not make you insecure. You have to understand the holistic aspect of life. If you do that, I would say read history. Everybody should read history of mankind. You see, those books are not printed to be kept in your cabinet so that the guests come and see, oh, well, he's a well-read person. Do that in the first phase itself. I believe our ancient idea of gurukuls and holistic teaching was one with a very good purpose. You see, there were no specializations in those times, but we still have beautiful temples. We have beautiful communities. We have so important philosophical books, orators. There was never an MBA. There was never an public speaking. There was never a special architectural college. There was never a special engine. There was never a specialist agriculture college. But it was all there. I would like to answer this that learn to deal with your fears and insecurities in the first place itself. Because if you avoid them, they are going to come back again and again and again at you at various different levels. And that's all an unanswered question. Thank you, Mayur, for asking me this so I could, dig deep out and come out with what I really feel.
Mhm. And how can our listeners follow you and your works?
Well, I am an introvert and a technocrat. So what I would do is I have a LinkedIn account and that's how we got connected. I would now would like to frequently post over it of whatever I'm doing and whatever I'm going through, like sharing. I'm not in Facebook per se because that's a clutter, I think, where you just you can understand where I'm coming from. So I would like to do more on the LinkedIn now because I see this last leg of giving. And as I told you, I'm involved in developing an association for my industry. Facilities, there would be books available, testing facilities with like-minded people. So it would be interesting.
I just had one question in mind. What is your favorite lightweight structure?
The Munich Olympic Stadium.
Uh,
Amazing. You see, when you talk about the favorite, you have to think the entire stuff. It is not about the looks. You see the constraints, you see the lack of software, you see the first time ability, and then you realize, wow, how would it have been? I've been there, I've been on top of the roof. I look, I believe that if you are in some place now, you try to feel the aura, the energy, the happening. If you just imagine that this was being constructed and I am at the same site and it is 1970s, and then there is Frey Auto and there is Buckminster Fully, and then there is the gamut of people trying to work out, spanning huge cables, fearful. They never put fabric on it. They put plexiglass because they thought that the fabric wouldn't hold. And just imagining that makes you, it's the same with the pyramids and all those structures where lack of resources, and still the quest of humankind to survive, to perform, to exceed. is what can be seen. And it's a timeless structure. It's a timeless structure, and I believe it's going to last much beyond than whatever I have done. It's original. So that's what it is. If you get an opportunity, be there. Go on top of the roof. Jump over it a little bit. See it, feel it. And then try to imagine that you don't have the tools and you are going to do this. And when you read history about it, you understand the entire evolution, the thought process gone into it. It's amazing. Today, if we have to do the same thing, I think there would be 50 companies world over would be interested in bidding. And that time there was not even one. That makes it much interesting, you see.
I see. And Mr. Dalir, I would like to say that one problem which I personally faced when I was in India is I couldn't find any inspirational role models back in India when I was 2 years ago, that who are architect and structural engineer as well. So I came to know about your name through a workshop on membrane structures. But I feel that there is a huge gap in terms of awareness about this kind of structures in academia or even professional life.
Not only not only these kind of structures, but as you see, as we are evolving further, you see the combination of multiple skills is going to be the need of the day. So I think when you come back to India, whenever you decide and whenever you want to do something, it would be an exciting place to be. The possibilities are endless. And why are people are missing? Because somebody has to take the risk. Somebody has to be the first man, take the challenges, success or failure. Now everybody is in a comfort zone. There are architects, there are engineers, there are very famous architects, and India does a good work of architecture. But yes, then comparing entirely, we have to do a lot of evolving. And you see, Mayur, now our even educational system is becoming much more practical than colonial. What we landed up was a colonial system. So we lost our culture and everything. It doesn't mean that it was not working. It was always working. So now when this new age comes in and new age thinkers like you who want to push boundaries, who want to challenge, who want to, do a lot more than restricting yourself to a comfort zone and have a comfy life and wife and settle down forever and retire and go away. You're not doing that. You're trying to contribute. You're trying to make some purpose out of a speck of a sperm which has come out. So this is where Mayur would take us to, and you're preparing yourself good.
Yeah. All right. Really appreciate your time for this. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too, Mayur. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope that this helps people to be motivated, to be inspired, and look out for themselves and find themselves. If they find themselves, the world will find them.